Ever have one of those late nights where you don't want to go to sleep, but you're just looking for a vibe? A specific kind. Nostalgia. Maybe nostalgia for something you didn't quite get to experience. Well, I found a post about a cancelled PS1 game, shelved for more than 20 years. The game looked fun. It looked like a game I could have played when I was a kid. I'm no stranger to dead ideas being thrown away before they're given a chance to shine. The difference with our subject today, Magic Castle, is that it's a game brought back to the light as freeware. Seeing that, I went out of my way to venture into the Magic Castle to have a good time. But I also wanted to know if Magic Castle could have been a PS1 classic. In order for me to talk about Magic Castle, I need to first go over the PlayStation Net Yaroze. The PlayStation Net Yaroze released in Japan only in June 1996, and then in 1997 it released in other countries. The system is meant for educational purposes and hobbyists to create games. It's a development toolkit that uses C for its programming language. Ken Kuraragi was the one who came up with the idea for the system. The term Yaroze means let's do it together, and the point of the system is to get people to work together to make a game. The Net Yaroze wasn't the same as a consumer PlayStation, as it was a different color being black instead of gray, it was more expensive, but more importantly, the Yaroze boot disc will not work on an unmodified retail machine because of its unique region coding. This would mean if you made a game on the Yaroze and wanted to show publishers, you had to send in a VHS of the game and hope they would see it. If you set up a meeting with a publisher, you could also bring your setup to them and show them the game directly. While I know this isn't the first time a system like this was made for amateur game developers, I still think it's amazing to see a program like this in the earlier years of game development. The Yaroze not being as cheap as the retail console makes it harder to get. However, one can have a day job so they can fund their endeavors. People could do it themselves, or they can form a team of like-minded individuals. And that's how the development of Magic Castle would begin. Enter Keiichi Mitsunami and Hiroyuki Ito, aka Pyro. These two would meet in an arcade company called Video Systems Incorporated in Kyoto at the age of 21. Both would develop games on the X38000 and gain experience in game designing. Keiichi Mitsunami worked on 18-wheeler American Pro Trucker and its spiritual sequel, King of Route 66. Both Mitsunami and Pyro were developing Sonic Wings, or known internationally as Aero Fighters. Working on 18-wheeler and Sonic Wings and its following sequels would be important, as this would mean Mitsunami and Pyro would bond more while making games, talking about their favorites that Nintendo, Sega, Namco, Capcom, and SNK would create. After working at Video Systems Inc. for a while, Mitsunami would make the bold decision to quit. He, along with Pyro would get together and form a unofficial studio. They would call this unofficial studio Kaiga. The two would buy development equipment, which would include the Net Yaroze, costing 1,119 USD. Pyro would also rent the second floor of his aunt's pet shop to make a development room. Mitsunami would be on planning, game design, and graphics, while Pyro would be on game design and programming, both on full time. They would also get help from Tetsuya Kanatani for programming and Soshi Hosoi for sound design. The team would do their best to achieve the dream that they shared of creating a video game that would sell 1 million copies. And they would attempt to do this with Magic Castle within a year. According to Pyro in the early stages of development, they created an action game in which a large number of students competed in a school building. Later, they would change this into a fantasy setting, and that fantasy game would also be in 3D and have roguelike elements. The inspiration to move forward in this direction would stem from the fact that, at the time, there were no rogue-like 3D games that were multiplayer with jump action. The titular knight that is featured on the logo of Magic Castle would use gameplay influenced by Namco's Dragon Buster, and the coin collecting would be influenced by Sega's Fantasy Zone. In 8 months, an unfinished prototype of Magic Castle would be made, and Metanami was positive if he could get the resources to finish the game properly, the action RPG would become extremely popular. So in that moment, he would send videotapes of Magic Castle, a proposal pitch, a resume of all the members of the team, and sent them to Japan's leading game companies. And 2 of those companies would answer back. One of them was Sony Computer Entertainment Incorporated. Apparently, while they were making Gunpila, that's when Sony responded positively. I'm guessing as soon as they got an email from Sony, they got themselves ready to present their project as soon as they could. And believe me, I would too. Metanami would make the meeting at the luxury hotel in Kyoto. Apparently, besides Pyro O getting nervous and spilling a glass of water during the meeting, the premise of Magic Castle was explained successfully. So a few days after the meeting, Sony got back with them, but rather than wanting to make Magic Castle, they wanted them to help Sony develop their current project at the time. This didn't sit well with them as they didn't want to go back to a corporate environment. They didn't want to make other people's games, they wanted to make theirs, Magic Castle. So they declined. Another company, unnamed by Metanami, would contact them too. The company specialized in developing famous RPGs. Whether it's Square, Enix, or Falcom, I'm not sure. But Team Kaiga were happy to show off Magic Castle regardless. In order to get the okay from this company, out of 10 judges, one of them had to give the okay. That meeting came and went, and they were able to impress 3 of the 10 judges. That company would have paid for development as well, but Metanami and Pyro O had to find more people for the development staff full time. The 2, at that moment, did not have those kind of connections, and they couldn't find the people. Eventually, the company gave up on the project in Team Kaiga. They weren't able to complete Magic Castle due to this lack of funding, and the project was cancelled in 1998, never to be seen again. At least, that would have been the case if it wasn't for some passionate Net Yaroze fans. On December 23rd, 2020, those Net Yaroze fans were able to find an old floppy disk of Magic Castle. They were able to continue development on Magic Castle, making the game playable and then later adding content to it. And that's where I come in. On a random summer day, I find myself looking on Twitter and I find a clip of this game. I thought it looked interesting, so I wanted to play it. I set up the emulator and got started on my journey in the Magic Castle. I wasted no time checking out the classes, so I'll read you the descriptions for each one from the manual, starting with the knight. Although his homeland has not yet been attacked by the creatures of the Magic Castle, he knows it's only a matter of time. Neighboring areas have already suffered their nuisance, and he does not want to put his people in jeopardy. The knight wears heavy armor, he's slow and lacks long-distance attacks. However, he has a wider variety of weapons compared to other characters, like having a sword that allows him to do a dash attack. He also has access to shields to block incoming damage. The wizard, being the youngest of her coven, she is not taken seriously by her fellow witches, so she has decided to risk her life gathering magic artifacts to increase her powers, and perhaps even dispatch the evil warlock and conquer the Magic Castle. That would certainly prove she's no apprentice anymore. The wizard uses a staff and is able to cast a lingering flame on the ground at the cost of SP, which is the magic point system. With an upgraded staff, she can fly, and the wizard might be the weakest at the start, but with upgrades, she can become the most powerful. Next, we have the fighter. The fighter has watched many loved ones enter the magic castle only to never return. After training, he felt confident enough in his chances of beating the warlock and his minions. By doing so, no more lives will be lost trying to get fame and fortune. The fighter is the toughest character, having the best stats overall early game compared to the other characters. His defense is higher than everyone else's by 1 point, and funny enough, this does kinda matter early game. While deadly in close quarters, he has no ranged attacks, with his fists being a shorter range than a sword. He does have a jump attack giving him a burst in movement, which makes him the fastest character off rip. With upgrades, he's able to wall jump, grab, and throw enemies. And lastly, we have the Archer. After her village was robbed by the creatures of the magic castle, she had no choice but to fight back and retrieve all the goods that were stolen. And perhaps she can get paid for her efforts too. The Archer is the only character with a long distance attack at the start. This gives her a clear advantage over other characters. She can charge her shot to make it go farther, she can aim the bow up to hit flying enemies, and she could rapid fire. If you rapid fire, you use SP if the arrow is still on the screen, as only one can be out at a time. And this was the character I started with. Generally, I'm into the rogue archetype, so the Archer is the closest to that. Especially with her backstory, her personality, she would be more my type. I mean, who doesn't love cash money? But at the time I didn't read into her backstory. In fact, I didn't read the manual at all, or even do the tutorial. I wanted to see what I could pick up on myself. I jumped in, chose the Archer, and I got mauled by a bat. Sure, I learned how to attack, but it felt a little bit awkward using the bow, especially hitting that small target. So next I decided to pick the fighter, and that's when I was able to make a little bit more progress. After defeating 2 rats, a key spawned. Keys will allow you to go to the next floor, and all you have to do is hit it. On the second floor, I came across an NPC that I assumed to be an orc. He apparently needs a sword as he can't fight without it. And all I can say to that is, that's rough, buddy. At the time, I thought it was a randomly generated quest, but later on I found out that the orc will always spawn on the second floor. Moving on from this area, I fight more rats. A behavior that I do want to spoil that the rats apparently have is that the female rats are more aggressive than the male ones. Anyway, I unfortunately lose to a larger rat, dying from contact damage. Spacing my attacks is a bit rough for this character. Unlike the Archer, I have no range, and I even have less range than a sword. Hand-to-hand combat is all he knows. It's a shame too, because I also wanted to open that chest in the room. Oh well. Starting my second attempt as a fighter, I quickly move on to the second floor, without grabbing the chest. What can I say? I didn't know any better. On that second floor, I find myself in a dark room where ghosts spawn. At this point, at this level, I get 2-tapped by them. And I can't fight back. Grabbing the black belt and some cash, I tried getting out, but the ghost appeared. I kept playing with not much luck. What I did find out is that fountains are stores, which at the time that really shocked me. But hey, knowledge is power, right? Never mind that though. Let's skip to my best run I had without a tutorial or guide. Now, by this point, I was able to use the fighter's basic attacks a lot better through positioning, and I came up with 2 new strategies, one of them being to find and grind efficiently. I would have to explore everything before moving on to the next floor, as leveling is important, and I could find items which could help me a ton. Why attack a monster when you do 1 damage to them when you can gain a level from defeating weaker monsters first? Being efficient simply requires me to move at a brisk pace during the early levels. Red bats early game are dangerous. And as for the second strategy, I'll tell you about that a little bit later. Anyways, during this specific run, I was able to pick up fighting boots and the Kempagi. The former lets me jump off walls, and the other one is just an upgrade to the tracksuit. Later, I find the Ring of Life, which drains your SP for HP until you're fully healed, or you're out of SP. Because of that accessory, I was able to complete a quest where I heal a friendly archer. She gives you a candle and gives advice. Beware the Rat Queen, she's a giant black rat. The candles don't light up the dark rooms where ghosts spawn, unfortunately, so they have to be used for something else. Later, getting to floor 6, I was able to find the muscle ring. This is an upgrade to the default weapon that you get. When I equip it, I get a class promotion and I become a ninja. And what does being a ninja mean over being a fighter? I'm gonna spoil it for you, just means you turn around faster. That's it. But hey, I can grab people with the muscle ring. And I ended up staying positive through the single-digit floors. It didn't seem like anything could stand a chance against me. On floor 7, I encounter a room full of skeletons, so I use a thunder scroll that I found. In that room, I find a ghost trap. With the next room being a ghost room, I knew exactly what to do. I also defeat 2 magical slimes. One gives me a skull and the other one gives me a blue leaf. I had no idea what the skull does even at this point. However, I did find out what the blue leaf does, and I'll tell you about that later. On floor 8, I had to implement the second strategy, something I call the door strat. You enter a room, funnel the enemies to the door, and then punch everyone until they die. And after doing that, I was able to get a black belt for my efforts. This floor was actually specifically notable because it had swarms and a knight. Knights fight you for a little bit and then they kinda just wander to the next room. The knights are annoying because they can combo you and block, but fortunately I was able to win. And here we get to floor 9. I get swarmed again, and when I beat them, I get to level 13. At this point, I felt like I was in the mid-game. I could still handle some of the monsters while others completely destroy me. I think what would be a good indicator that I am not at the early game is the fact that the bats don't hurt me as much, so I don't have to worry about taking too long in each level. I don't feel like I can win right now, but I feel like I can go the distance. Also, shoutouts to Bag Bats. Floor 10, I find a wizard that needs an SP potion, but I don't have any. I do hope to find some on this floor, but I'm not counting on it. In the next room, I find more skeletons, but there is a key. A key that spawns like that requires a specific monster to be defeated before it activates. In this specific case, it's a large blue slime. You know, now looking back at this footage, this floor did have a lot of slimes. In the next room, I find a magic scroll and another surprise bag, which was a bomb. Besides applying door strats, I wasn't able to find an SP potion as I predicted, and then I moved on to floor 11. Floor 11 was going well, until I screwed up my own door strat. Even looking back at this, it still frustrates me. It was after that run, however, I was able to form my first impressions for Magic Castle. Right, while keeping in mind that I opted out of the tutorial and that it's an old game, I still found myself having fun. Don't get me wrong, there were still growing pains learning the mechanics of Magic Castle. My character did drop like a fly often. I did pick up the basics of Magic Castle quickly, all things considered. Within 5 runs, I was able to understand how to attack and fight different enemies. I learned how to position myself better before striking. I understood how to reach the next floor. I also understood how important it is to find chests, and how to use the equipment that I find in them. I created strategies to progress easier, and the most important feature I learned was that fountains are stores. Honestly, I can't believe how much it shook me to my core when I found that out. Magic Castle went from near unbeatable to possible, at least in my eyes. But again, that's the price I pay for not looking at any guide. The presentation for Magic Castle is typical for what would normally come out at the time for the PS1. Low poly 3D with a cartoonish fantasy flair. The music for Magic Castle is fitting, and I even enjoy the cave theme. The gameplay felt a little bit clunky, but I did get used to it. Honestly, I think I was more annoyed that I couldn't adjust the camera myself. For the record, I didn't opt out of the tutorial just to make Magic Castle harder, but I did have the desire to return to a time when information wasn't easily accessible. When I played the PS1 on the regular, my younger self wouldn't be able to just go online and find the answer. My understanding of how video games worked were extremely limited back then. I knew about platformers, I played Smash 64, and I guess the other game was Gran Turismo 1. Shoutouts to my favorite car, the Honda Civic. It's not sponsored, by the way. By today's standards, those games are simple, but so is Magic Castle. It's not like I have to set my stats myself or choose what kind of party members I want in the moment. It's just myself, my thoughts, my character, and the castle, of course. You know, I think if my parents saw Magic Castle on the store shelf and saw that it was multiplayer, I think it would have been bought. There's no swearing, there's no blood, so yeah, I can see it. I know I would have spent a lot of time with the game, single player or multiplayer, so I know I would have been willing to learn the hard way if the video game manual wasn't in the case. You know, like a used copy. So why not emulate that feeling the best way I can? It's nostalgic and it added to my experience. I did keep playing and tried out other classes. I didn't get nearly as far as I did with the fighter. I still had fun, so I guess that's okay. But there was just one late night where I died and I thought to myself, I think it's time I look at the guide or tutorial. So by reading the manual, what did I learn? Well, let's zoom out to the main goal. The player needs to find and defeat the Castle Master or the Warlock. Friendly NPCs will always be on the same floor, but can randomly be found beyond a certain floor number. Along the way, you may face additional challenges like capturing a ghost. And the completion of these additional tasks will net you a better rank in the end. There are 4 side quests and 4 secret ones. Obviously, I knew Magic Castle was a roguelike from playing it. However, I wasn't sure how many floors there were. Surely there can't be that many, right? Right? Also, I found out how to control the camera. In the emulator that I used, I changed the controller settings from joypad digital to joypad analog. And in-game, I have to set the camera to manual. When it's on auto and manual, it resets its position when you let go of the joystick. I learned that the water and fire that comes out of the ground are traps. The fire trap specifically stuns you. And when you do get stunned by the fire trap, you can rapidly tap one of the face buttons to recover quickly. I learned that all the classes had more to them than I initially tested out. Basically what I'm saying is that I finally read the description overview for each character. Unfortunately, it didn't mean that I tried out other classes to beat the game with. I only cared about the fighter. Then I read at the tip section of the manual, you can do a half circle motion to turn around faster instead of hitting that direction immediately. Then lastly, I read that the warp scroll takes you to a place. I don't know where, but it takes you to somewhere. The guide also mentions you can use this when you're in danger. So think of a get out of jail free card. If you're wondering about the in-game tutorial, well, I can't speak Japanese.
それでは簡単な画面の説明を行います。
I'm sure she's nice though. And from what I can see, this is just basic info that I picked up on myself. Anyway, as a whole, the information I saw from the manual was good and important to know. That said, I'll summarize 2 of the best runs that I've had in Magic Castle into Run A and Run B. You can tell which run is which by looking at the top left of the screen. I will also divide this into 3 sections: early, mid, and late game. With that said, into the castle we go. In both runs, I move quickly, clearing monsters as fast as I can and grabbing as many potions as I can. In Run A, I find myself to be more reckless, so I'm at low HP. I risk waiting until the 3rd floor to heal myself. Luckily, being patient pays off, as I was able to find a regular HP potion. The other potion I picked up was an HS, which heals both HP and SP. I would rather use that potion when I'm able to use SP to get maximum value. The 5th floor gave me the hookup. I was able to get the muscle ring, which at this point I assumed it was the best upgrade, and I was able to get a mini HS potion. I was able to help the archer and get the candles. Then I started to use the throw move more, which made clearing this floor easier. Sadly, I got too throw happy and ended up breaking the key that spawned, taking me to the next floor. On floor 6, I came up with the idea to throw loop enemies, the first victim being the skeleton. And by the time I complete this floor, I end up being level 7. In Run B, I get resources such as potions and scrolls, Geyser and Drain. Geyser is an AoE that does 25 damage, and Drain stuns everything in the room, healing the player based on how many get hit by it. I also pick up the green leaf. Unfortunately, in this run I wasn't able to get a new weapon or armor. Only more potions, but that's a good thing because I was able to give a spare one to the archer. I was able to get through the early game in this run by level 10. The level of confidence I had in my ability to execute my tactics flawlessly was still present. In Run A, I put stronger enemies in a throw loop. I had enough resources to give the wizard an SP potion, and she gives you a small key to open a chest. I'd say I was feeling a bit better about Run A because I had the gear. I then attempt to explore more of the level. Right. Anyway, Run B goes the same way, except I had default gear. I had to play carefully, even if I had enough potions to call myself a potion seller. I did get more cash and bats from a bag. And the wizard quest was completed here too. For both runs on the 11th floor, I fight the large bat. One would believe there would only be 2 outcomes that can occur here: winning or losing. However, in Run A, I found the 3rd option, screw up. Yeah, I forgot that the key activates and teleports the player when any amount of damage is dealt to it from the player. That one was definitely my fault. Run B, I'd found and used the Ring of Power. When equipped, it drains SP in exchange for being invincible the whole time. Doing so got me the win, and the reward was getting a fairy. When you have the fairy, she can make the camera point directly downward. That's it. I would at least say, in Run A, I was able to get a lucky charm, which gives you another life, although it gets used quickly. So the real prize was getting a chuckle from one-shotting the red bat that keeps respawning in front of me. Now this is when Run A and B deviate. On the 14th floor, I get access to a warp scroll. In Run A, I give the warp scroll to the fighter NPC. And in Run B, I don't, and I use it for myself. In both paths, I learn important info. Looking at Run B, you will see that I go to the basement. The basement is a dark room with a bunch of chests that you can open. There's one that you need a key for, and the candles don't seem like they light the area, or at least give you more visibility. When you leave the basement, you go to the 1st floor, the exact 1st floor that you started in. Every chest that you have opened will have a different item than before. So if you find yourself with default equipment late into your run, you can have more chances to gear up. My luck was terrible, so it applies to this run. And then the monsters that spawn will be appropriate to your level, so you still have to tread carefully. In Run A, the fighter gave me the muscle ring, and at the time I felt ripped off because I already had this. However, when you think about it, this would be a guaranteed way to get a weapon upgrade, if you didn't have one before. Upon leaving this floor in Run A, I would learn info about the castle that would fill me with dread. On the 15th floor, I would enter the castle tile set, and I notice it's notably darker without ghosts. I get a life ring that automatically heals you if you have the SP, and then I come across a bookshelf. Now, generally, bookshelves don't really give important info, they just kind of tell you the genre that you see. Bookshelves can also give you a blank scroll to use, but essentially it's just flavor text. On this floor, it was different. The book states, booby traps and other elements can turn useless items into valuable artifacts. Apparently, it's showing me that I can craft items. In the example it shows me, it tells me I could turn a green leaf into a brown leaf using the fire trap, and I need a geyser in order to make a special potion out of the brown leaf. You can use traps with other items like the blue leaf, with it becoming an odd potion on a fire trap. Odd potions will heal HP or SP for a random amount. There are also blank scrolls that you can turn to magic scrolls, such as the Geyser and Fire Scroll respectively. The book also tells me that doppelgangers can be found after defeating the Rat Queen and Black Golem. The book also states there is a shortcut to get to floor 100, but you need a master key and a fountain. Now, I've seen fountains before, but not a master key. I can only assume it comes from one of the bosses, either the Black Golem or Rat Queen or something I just haven't come across. And then lastly, it tells you how to defeat a Red Knight. If you take out another knight with a glowing sword, the Red Knight will go from having infinite HP to 450. And after seeing all this, I kinda just felt like that's a lot of info to tell the player. Luckily, I could just screenshot and never forget. But back in the day, I would have to take notes or use my Virgin Mobile Cyclops flip phone to take a picture. And take it from me, I would honestly rather write it down. On that realization, I make my way through the 15th and 17th floor. I did have a few close calls in Run A, especially with the tiny golem. That thing was giving me the business, Jesus. Fortunately, I kept it together and I was able to get my class promotion to Ninja on the 18th floor. I make sure I have enough SP potions to fuel my life ring. While I did get another warp scroll, I didn't use it. And I also got a lucky charm. Meanwhile, Run B has to make it all the way back to the 14th floor and then reach the 20th, which I do. Sorry to spoil that, but it shouldn't be a surprise as I'm just so good at the game. That said, why do I put emphasis on the 20th floor when there are 100 of them? Well, this is where Run A and B end. Both times I was as prepared as I could be. I remember at the time, I also didn't think that there would be such a dramatic change in music, too. With the ghosts, you get that effect, but this was different. The emotions I felt were confused and uneasy. I figured one of the monsters would be the Rat Queen or the Black Golem, and eventually I would find a Blue Knight. I fought it like anyone else. This specific encounter was harder than other knights, so I assumed at the time that this specific enemy had a very important item or at least something strong that I've never seen before. Frankly, I was kinda hoping for the Master Key. But when I did defeat him, I got a sword that I've never seen before, and the Golden Knight. The lucky charm got used instantly, and I thought I had a chance because I had full HP and SP, which meant I had the life ring ready to go. Plus I was level 18, so just use the knowledge I just learned, right? Nah, it was over for run A. What a shame. Seems like that orc will be swordless. But what about run B? Getting to floor 20 felt like a victory lap, up to floor 19, which is where I had a close call. I got geared up on my journey back and got juggled for old time's sake. The difference is, now at floor 20, I'm level 20. So I find the blue knight and I take him out, as awkward as it was. The golden knight spawns and he's in my sight. Kinda, it was dark. The difference this time was that I had the Ring of Power. I noticed every clean hit I was landing, it was making him teleport. Funny enough, I was able to predict where he was gonna teleport at one point. I end up fighting the Golden Knight in this room for a while. The teleporting gets extremely annoying, but I wasn't losing, so it was fine. After a bit, he tried running away, but I knew his days were numbered, so I hunted him down so I can get that last hit. Now, even though I'm looking at the credits screen, the game still tells me that evil is still here. And I figured as much because there are 100 floors. Even so, I let out a sigh of relief. Because I didn't screw up, and that's all that mattered to me. I finally won, after almost 2 hours. Let's talk about Magic Castle as a whole. Judging Magic Castle by today's standards would be completely unfair. This game doesn't have the luxury of looking at the years of refinement the roguelike subgenre has gone through. Magic Castle's selling point was that it had jump action. I think we're far past that at this point. Not to mention the game is unfinished, so to be fair to Magic Castle, I have to keep all that stuff in mind. And after spending all that time with the game, my opinion on Magic Castle can be summed up like this. Magic Castle is good, but not 100 floors good or even 50 floors. When I completed 20 floors for the first time, I felt satisfied. The second time, which I was surprised to even do, I felt the same way. But during that time, I found out about new stuff, which I'll get to in a moment. Knowing the unfinished nature of Magic Castle, I thought to myself, what would make me play 50 or 100 floors of this castle? Splitting this into two sections between non-gameplay and gameplay, let me tell you what would motivate me to keep me going, rather than just boredom. We all know graphics aren't everything. You know the quote, don't treat a book by its cover. Though I do understand that it certainly helps. Don't worry, I'm not going to have a Nintendo hire this man moment. The visuals for Magic Castle are fine for the time. The low poly medieval aesthetic is a vibe for sure, but more could be done with it. The baseline only has the cave and castle tile set. The castle tile set does feature a different look past floor 20. I was shocked to see it, but only seeing a difference after floor 20 made me feel like it took too long to see something new. What if we had a tile set for the cave variant that has jail cells? You know, like a dungeon. The castle tile set having two different looks is cool, and there could be more of it. Castles do have more to them. There could be a library, a courtyard, and even have a hedge maze. Or, because it's a magic castle, you can be a lot more creative with the themes. For the specific case of this game, having 5 different settings that it can cycle through regularly could be a good thing, and you can have special ones come up at random. To me, this would be better than what's currently here, if there are even more changes later on. Then quickly going over the sound design, being the music and sound effects, I don't think anything needs to be changed there. I just would like more of it. The main screen could use a touch-up, and so can the character select screen. I would also add a picture to the background of the text crawl. In my head, I think about the Magic Castle getting increasingly more visible as the story is told. Speaking of the story, I don't think the story for Magic Castle needs much changing. Not everything needs a complex narrative. A simple story works, with the goal of being Slay the Warlock, or Castle Master. The developers made it clear, to me at least, that they wanted to focus on gameplay. The background stories for the characters are good, but I kind of wish that they were visible to the player in-game. You know, probably through the character select screen. The supplementary material like lore can be placed throughout the castle, being located on the bookshelves and maybe coming from the NPCs. The lore that would be shown would be short and not drawn out. I just want them to do more besides giving the occasional blank scroll and mostly just telling you the genre of books that they are. You know, what if a note could be found in one of the books that gave the player advice? The knight, fighter, wizard, and archer could all give different types of advice that fits the personality of that class. For instance, the knights can give tips on equipment, the fighter can give tips on combat and positioning, the wizard can give tips on magic scrolls, and the archer can talk about items. The act of learning more about the game through experimentation will always be satisfying, but this will be an alternative if you choose to seek it out. Another thing that can be done is NPCs and their quests can be given a little bit more flavor to them. For instance, the wizard quest will be normal when other classes complete them, but the text would be slightly different when you complete it as the wizard. Before completion, that wizard might say, "You're that young witch. I can't believe you made it this far. If you can spare an SP potion, that would help me a lot." Then after completion, the NPC will say this: "Thank you. You must be a talented witch if you were able to do what you did. Here, take this." And that's pretty much all I would do for Magic Castle's writing. Then last but not least, I want to talk about the gameplay. Magic Castle's gameplay isn't bad by any means, just unfinished and unpolished. I wonder what the game would have been like if one of those major companies picked it up, like the aforementioned Sony, or maybe the others that I theorized like Square, Enix, or Falcom. You know, like a budget that isn't a paperclip in a shoestring. And we can do this by polishing and adding to what's there. Let's start with this one. Allow the players to adjust how they want the UI in the menu instead of the game. Couple that with the Quality of Life edition with a conventional pause menu where you can change it there too. This would also free up buttons for other uses. Then don't allow the player to get juggled to take free damage. Let them do a quick recovery in one of 8 directions to get out of danger, or at least attempt it. I think this would be fine. Going in the wrong direction will still punish the player. Then I would allow the player to turn around faster naturally. I dislike the idea of being forced to turn around slowly even if I do the half circle motion. How fast you are able to turn around when you get the class upgrade should be the norm. Getting that class upgrade should yield a better reward than just turning around faster anyway. Then there's the camera. I would allow the player to change the camera to top down for free. The fairy being the only thing allowing the player to do this is kind of weak. The player should just have access to this function anyway. And then the fairy should have a more useful function like providing utility for the player in some way. Although I did find out that the extra fairies in single player mode do heal the player, but only one time, and it's only for a small amount. And then there's class progression. Leveling up is easy enough. I wouldn't have the player place points into stats. I would keep it simple. However, out of the 4 classes, the knight is the most complete, just looking at his equipment. He has 5 weapons, and has to choose between having the higher damage sword with no skills, being the heavy metal, or the light blade that does less damage and has weapon skills. While the archer does have a similar choice between the short, long, and magic bow, the fighter and wizard generally are better off getting their best weapon, being the muscle ring and flying rod respectively. I would add 2 more weapons to the archer, wizard, and fighter to match the knight. For example, what if we had a bracelet for the fighter that allowed him to do a small AoE knocking enemies back and it used SP? What if the wizard had 2 staffs that could freeze an enemy? The weaker staff can cost 2 SP, only freezing 1 enemy, and the stronger staff can do an AoE that surrounds the player, costing 8 SP, instead of the flame pillar's 7. The archer could have a bow that lets her place a trap for enemies to walk on, dealing damage, or even have a spread shot when you hold a button down. And that's just the weapons. You can add more armor, rings, and even scrolls. Then lastly, I would add more events that keep the player invested in the run that they're in. This would include the hedge maze being a level, and then the courtyard or ballroom being a fight arena. The player would have to constantly make new choices as to what weapon that they want for the challenge that they have ahead of them. Even though I said all of this, I do understand that there's not a lot of space on the PS1 disc. I can only add so much to this game. The possibilities of what could have been are endless. I could go on and on forever about this, but I want to stop here, because at that point, I should make my own game. I do want to give Magic Castle credit for what's here, even if I didn't want to play 100 floors of it. I played the other classes because Magic Castle would always sit in the back of my mind, wondering if the other classes are fun, and I just didn't give them a chance. I took it upon myself to play more of it, and I was pleasantly surprised. I can say that I like the wizard and fighter equally, then the archer, and then the knight. The early game for the knight is too slow for my tastes. I also got curious about what items transformed on the water and fire traps respectively, and I was happy to see a different type of odd potion was created when I placed the blue leaf on the water trap. The extra effect is kinda neat. And then there was seeing the combination between the flying rod's flight ability and the fire ring, allowing the player to drop fire on enemies. Seeing that was cool. Just sucks that this game couldn't be finished. Honestly, I could see Magic Castle being a cult classic, a game people look back at fondly because they remember those nights they tried to defeat the Golden Knight, whether it be solo or in a party. I'm getting nostalgia for a game that never came out, just thinking about all that. An alternative pass I could have had if Magic Castle got released proper, and my parents got it for me for Christmas. I can see myself play this game with family and friends. I wonder what kind of cultural impact Magic Castle would have had if it got released. I'm not too sure myself. Well, besides the game being the jump action roguelike on the PS1, being an early adopter of the roguelike mechanics would have been important for sure. You know, knowing that this game never came out, you might be wondering what happened to the original developers. As far as I know, they're fine. Keiichi Mitsunami is specifically known for the Hatsune Miku Project Diva series. Pyro O and the sound designer Saochi Hosoi still work together on occasion, and that's great for them. I just kinda wanted to talk about Magic Castle because it looked interesting, and it was free. $3.99, baby! It was due to the Net Yaroze community that I was able to play Magic Castle in the first place, so thank you. My journey through the Magic Castle was a good experience. Fun to document too. And you know, if you have the time, I recommend you play this game. I will put a link for it in the description. But that's it from me. I'll see you on the next one.